All right, welcome back to another episode of Thrivers Ed. I am so intrigued and a little bit nervous today with my guest, Lisa Roers, because what we're going to talk about is something that I am both obsessed with and kind of terrified. I am obsessed with all things medical and health and all these things, and it also just completely freaks me out. And so when I heard Lisa's story, I had to bring her on because I just think it is absolutely incredible, and I wanted you guys to hear it first from her words. So, Lisa, welcome to Thrivers Ed.
Thank you so much for having me, Marcy. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. So I'm kind of teasing it a little bit, but I really want to hear your story. So tell me kind of, we did your bio, but I want to really hear about really how you got to where you are today.
Wow, that's always such a long story. You know, specifically related to the health thing, I was like anybody else that grew up kind of in the 80s, and I never had good training. My parents did not know what good food was, and we didn't have access to the things we have access to now. So it's easy these days to be a little more obsessed about medical stuff because there's between ChatGPT, which is kind of like my new first line doctor, and all the other things that are available for us on for research on the internet. There's like an unlimited supply. I mean, we have access to those scientific studies and we have access to so much data these days. But when I was in my early years, I didn't have access to any of that. I really, honestly, I'm not kidding you, Marcy. I really didn't know the difference between a protein and a carb and all those things until I got to college and when I started kind of looking into it. And all of those bad decisions that I had growing up ended up catching up to me after I really was I poured into my career for a good 20, 25 years. And all of a sudden, if we don't give our bodies what they need, eventually they will make sure they get what they need. And that will either show up in a disease or a chronic illness or even just a flu or a cold because our bodies need certain things. And that hit me on one very cold February, I think it was February 11th morning in 2017. And woke up and I just couldn't move. I was really, really sore. And I just thought maybe I slept wrong. Not a big deal. I just slept wrong. So the next night I tried a different surface. The next night I tried a different surface. I tried every surface in my household, including the floor, and nothing worked. It just got worse and worse. And this pain that kind of started up in my neck slowly moved down my back to like really painful when you breathe in and those back ribs expand. Then it moved down into my hips and it settled in my hips and my knees. And I literally could not walk because I couldn't extend my knee. I couldn't collapse my knees. So bending them was like impossible. So that kind of kicked off this huge journey that I have been on because that ended up lending itself to a bunch of other things. I ended up having leg ulcers and a hand ulcer and all these other different autoimmune things that just rocked my world in a way I never realized was possible. I just never knew something like that could happen to my body without being like hit by an actual semi truck. Really, I can just be here normal, standing here being a person. And then all of a sudden my body can do this to itself. It was really quite eye opening. So in that period of time, and I know this is already getting to be a long story, but in this period of time, I had seen, of course, I go to the doctor because that's what you do when things happen to your body and you don't know what's going on. But I was getting no answers, Marcy. I literally went to 26 doctors over the course of 2 years, including 3 days at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, which is one of the highly acclaimed clinics of the entire country. And I saw 8 different modalities of doctors, so functional medicine and Western medicine and infectious diseases and you name it. Nobody had answers for me. It was so, so frustrating, not to mention really expensive. And it just kind of dawned on me that nobody's going to know my body better than me. Now, they may have all the training, they may have all of that wonderful, rich background that they get when they're doing their PhDs, but they don't have the knowledge of me. And so I really dove into the research myself to understand, okay, I knew at this point that it was coming from an autoimmune process, but I didn't know how to stop it. And so I thought, well, if I have something that's really broken in my house, if I have something that's going wrong with a plant, if I have something going wrong with a machine, what do? I take it down to the very basic and I rebuild it. So I kind of started there, Marcy. I rebuilt my immune system and it took some time. And yes, I also have become quite obsessed with all the things that are, medically and health related. But I've learned so much. And I think the bottom line, to just kind of pass it back to you, is I've really learned how important it is to be our own self advocate and to be willing to take control of our own health.
Man, I don't know what I would be doing if I were in your shoes. Like I'm the person that gets a headache and immediately assumes it's a tumor of some sort, or I definitely have cancer and I'm dying from this headache. So I'm really curious what was going on in your head through all this, both in terms of the very beginning from not being able to get out of bed or to move or to bend your knees up until, okay, like I really need to go see a doctor. And then you have all these doctors and none of them are able to find anything. Was there any point of this where you're like, maybe it's all in my head, or maybe this isn't really happening, or like really just what was the thoughts going on this time?
Great question because, you go through all of those thoughts. We're people and we are emotive beings. And so you go through the whole gamut of emotions and thoughts and fears and worries. And in my family, my mom had multiple sclerosis. So I knew, was already genetically predisposed to something related to autoimmune because MS is autoimmune related. It wasn't a tumor. So you can start kind of dissecting or at least eliminating the things that it is or isn't. And so I kind of came down to the fact that this was an autoimmune issue and nothing else. And you come to that just by having the peace of mind to say, "Hey, I'm just going to figure it out. I'm just going to be curious to find out what's at the root cause of this." And so, yeah, the emotions are there and the whole array of things that we worry about are there. But you also have to be mindful. And as I learned more about this, I became more mindful of the fact that if I stress too much about it, I'm literally just going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy and
Mhm.
start creating the thing I'm worried about. So I'm really just going to take a breath. I leaned into my faith huge during this time to really just trust that, God knows the number of my days. And I'm just going to release that fear to Him and do what I can with the information that's given to me.
So, oh goodness, I don't even know. I am just I'm still like a little bit of chills. I can't catch anything over the Zoom. We'll be fine. I I can't imagine struggling with both physical and kind of all of the emotional aspects of there of just not even having an answer. Sometimes even if we don't like the responses there, just having some kind of answer to say at least this what is what it is. And then, whether or not we can actually do something about that is kind of out of our hands sometimes. But having kind of all of this of just this unknown and the physical discomfort of not really knowing when it's going to end, if there's anything you can do, like how after seeing these 26 doctors, like how do you continue? What was your next step from that?
Yeah. The not having a label actually ended up being the biggest blessing in the whole process because when you're I think sometimes the labels are helpful. Yes, I completely agree because it kind of gives you a sense for what step to take next and maybe the protocol that will help you come out of that tunnel that you feel like you're in. But in my case, I didn't want any of the labels because that defined me in a way I didn't want to be defined. This was not a thing that I needed to be labeled by. This was a autoimmune issue that I just needed to heal from. Much like I don't need a diagnosis when I have a cold. I don't need a diagnosis when I have a runny nose. I just need to take care of my health and let my body heal. And so it was those kinds of things that really freed me to be able to kind of just I'm just going to dive into what I know. And there's so many things in this story, so many moments where I was overwhelmed by I just don't know what to do. What step do I take next? And the message that I kept on getting back was just do what you know to do. You know enough to take that next step. You don't have to do all the things. You don't have to have all the answers. But I knew I wasn't eating well. I knew that I needed to nourish my body so it had the tools to heal. And I kept on learning. Okay, well, where does the immune system start from? Where does it source from? It starts from the gut. Okay, well, let's rebuild my gut. Let's rebuild my immune system from the gut forward. And it was just kind of, it was a very methodical process of I can't do everything. I don't know how long it's going to last because I'll tell you, the leg ulcers lasted for about 3 or 4 months. They healed very, very slowly, and they're very sore. But, but it's the kind of thing where I used to tell my husband, it's like, this is worse than giving birth. Because at least with a baby, it was very painful, but I knew that within 24 hours, probably that child would be out and the pain would be over. But with these things, I had no idea when was it going to end? What was this going to morph into? I mean, you look on the internet and you see all these horrible pictures, and that just, puts the fear of God right back into you. So it was definitely a faith journey, and it was a process to just kind of do what I know I can do and kind of survival. It's like, I can't do anything else. So, I'm not going to give up. I just have to take the next step that I can take. And when I started seeing results and I started seeing improvements, that gave me so much hope, Marcy, to just sign a note. And it takes time, when your body is healing. If you cut your finger, even, you can look back and it takes a good, 3 weeks sometimes for that finger cut to go away. So, of course, the healing that's happening on the inside of my body isn't going to go any faster. I need to give it a good month or so. And that's, I think, hard in our time in this particular culture that we live in because everything is, 2-day prime delivery and, we're very impatient. But it really taught me a lot about patience. It taught me a lot about resilience. It made me a lot stronger. It gave me a whole lot more empathy for people who are going through really hard things that have no real true answers. And it really showed me a lot about what our medical system is capable of doing and the areas where they're not as strong, and how I have to kind of step in to be a good advocate for myself when the medical system isn't able to fill that part. I think we have a tendency to kind of put all of our trust and all of our hope and we just kind of like check our brain at the door and we put all of our trust in our doctors. And we really need more and more as I went through this journey, is like we have got to partner with them. We have to bring our piece of the puzzle to the table. We only get a few minutes with them. We have to help them understand in as quick as time as possible the things that are going on so they can use their knowledge to plug in and fill the gaps. But I think too many times we walk in with no answers, no research already done, no familiarity what's going on, and then we expect them in 15 minutes to tell us the right approach. And that you'll get an approach, but it may not be the right one.
Yeah, and it's well documented that women's troubles and health things are diminished, right? Are diminished. And I think it's really hard because something on a scale of 10, like a 9 for you is somebody else's 3 or somebody else's 19. So to really help them understand, like, no, this is exactly what's going on, and being that advocate for you, especially as a woman, is so important. And you said something else in there too, where you're kind of talking about like the label that you're not really a whatever the diagnosis is person. It's just, I don't really even need the name. What I need to know is, what can I control? What do I already know about the situation? What kind of things can I take into this? And I see a lot of parallels in my own journey with drinking and alcohol, right? I don't need the name alcoholic. And for some people, actually, that label is a form of comfort. Like, okay, this is who I am. This is something that I can't change about me. And, now I know where my boundaries lie and what I can and cannot do. Whereas for me, and makes sounding a little bit like you, like I don't really need the label. I need to know what it is that I feel like I can control, and I can control my actions, and I can control my beliefs about things, which is really what it came down to for the alcohol. It's, what do I believe this thing is going to do for me, and for you, it's, what do I know about my body? What do I know about autoimmune? What was I learning in the research? And I'd actually really like to dive into that research piece. You kind of touched on it before, like how did it go about? What did you actually discover in diving into these pieces?
Yeah. Well, the thing that you just said that really hits home for me is so many people use those labels and they're comforting, and that they just accept it. Okay, this is just what I am and I can't change it. And that is the lie. That is the lie right there. And now, when it comes to addictions, I think we all have addictions. So you may always have a propensity to be addicted to a particular thing or an activity or something or food or alcohol, whatever it might be. But when it comes to health, you are never always fill in the blank, because our bodies are innately created to heal. So even something that's in your genes, oh, everybody in my family has diabetes, I'm definitely going to get diabetes. No, I'm sorry, you're not actually, because there's so much research now. And that's actually how what they thought they used to think that was the case. But there's this thing called epigenetics. If people haven't heard that word, it's kind of a fancy word, but epigenetics. And it really just means that yes, you're given a blueprint for your body, but what you eat, what you put in your body, and what you surround your body with, everything from the perfumes you wear to the products you use to the cleaning materials, cleaning solutions you use, all of those things affect our body, and it turns on certain genes or shuts them off. And so you might have the gene for XYZ cancer, but that doesn't mean anything. You have all the power in the world to feed your body and fuel your body well, and to allow your body to turn those bad genes off and turn the good genes on. And our bodies want to thrive. They want to be healthy. So feeding them and fueling them well really, really is just a game changer. And I think that's the biggest eye-opening thing on the scientific side that I realized, because my mom, again, struggled with multiple sclerosis for 50 plus years. And so, I mean, that's all I grew up with. I was always her caregiver. I was always her caretaker. And I could have mentally gone to that place of, oh, well, mom's got MS. I'm probably going to have MS too. But no, it's not the case at all. And I don't. I have nothing neurological like that. So, really, really encouraging, right? So, as far as the other science that goes behind it, it really comes down to fueling our body with the foods we need and removing as much of the things that our bodies are not used to or not equipped, not evolved to handle. So, no, we can't remove every toxin, and that's okay. We're not supposed to. Anytime anything comes out of your body, a tear, a spit, a sweat, an elimination, any of those things, those are all pathways that our bodies remove toxins from our body. So they have lots and lots of pathways that they're used to getting toxins out of our body. What we need to do to be a responsible, I like to call it a dance partner. So I and my body are dance partners, and I have to give it what it needs, and it will give me what I need. And so I need to give it good fuel, and I need to do my best to eliminate, to create kind of this good firewall around my body. So I limit as much as I can of extra toxins that are going in. So no, I don't wear perfumes that are toxic. I will wear perfumes that are just essential oils. Absolutely. That's a natural product. My body can handle that. I don't use cleaning products that are toxic. My body doesn't need that extra toxic load. I don't put food in my body that is called food, but in quotes, but isn't really food. So there's so much of that. And I could probably, Marcy, talk with you and your audience for another 2 hours about what things are and are not good for our bodies for healing and for just for fueling. But that's the science behind it, is that you don't have to be, it's so empowering. You don't have to be worried about cancer or diabetes or heart disease or dementia and Alzheimer's and all these different things. If you fuel your body well, your body will take care of most of the rest of that. And all of those things, including MS, which I always was taught as I was growing up, is not reversible. Once my mom lost her walking, they're like, she's never going to be able to walk again. And now we're finding that's not true. People can reverse MS and all the symptoms of MS. So that completely kind of blew my mind when I started seeing people reversing diseases that doctors for decades have been saying were irreversible. Well, if that's possible, what else could be possible?
Oh goodness. I love this. I love the hope that's there. I love the sense of control, right? Again, if we're going back to just to analogize my own journey with alcohol, I've had a lot of people in my sphere telling me, oh, well, my dad, mom, aunt, uncle, brother, all these people are alcoholics, so I'll be an alcoholic too. And yet you can see at the same time that there are other people that grew up in very similar circumstances. Everybody around them drank, and that's why they don't touch alcohol at all, right? You get to have a choice. I'm predestined to this is just the way it's going to be. Or you can say, you know what? I've seen that path and I want to try something else. us, right? It doesn't mean that we can completely prevent every possible thing from happening to us, but we do, like you said, have some kind of agency in this, and we can control at least the risk that we have with this epigenetics that you're saying, that by the chance it's going to turn on or turn off some genes by making the best choices for our body. And a lot of time, those choices are, I'm going to get a little bit conspiracy theory here, and I think you might play along with me, but a lot of time those choices are ones that aren't necessarily things that are going to be well broadcast because there's not a lot of money in it. I know I've heard you talk about following the money trail. So do you want to tell me a little bit about kind of what you see there?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my goodness. This is another hour-long podcast I could go into. Um, for those who don't know and don't know my story, but I'm a candidate right now for a PhD in natural medicine. I've just learned so much about it. I'm like, well, I might as well get the degree because I've just learned so much. But I just finished an amazing study about how the money trail is affecting everything. And I really want people to realize and think about this for a second. It's very natural. It's very understandable that people need to fund research projects that have a potential profit. They're very expensive. They take a lot of money. Nothing is free. Absolutely nothing is free. Someone's got to pay for it. Someone's got to, someone has to fit the bill for it. Someone has to pay for the people doing it. They pay the lunches, the dinners, the food, everything has to get paid for. So they're not going to fund a research project that just tells people to eat good food because you can't patent that and you can't sell it. There's no money in it, even though it might be the right answer. So most of our research studies, so I'm taking it all the way back to to where it starts, which is at the before any product can be created or any drug can be made, it all stems from the research. So you have to look at how is the money impacting that? Who's paying for the research? I mean, there's some statistics out there right now, Marcy, that are saying 80% of the researchers who are doing research change the numbers in order to make the person funding the research happy. I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of a human trait that we want to make those happy. And we have to make people who are paying the bill happy because if they aren't happy, they're not going to pay the bill. And then I don't get to pay, I don't get my income. My family doesn't get food on the table. My house, my mortgage doesn't get paid. So it's this money drives everything. And I think it's a really critical tool for all of us to realize as we're building our businesses or as we're trying to help our health thrive. What you hear is not always going to be the best strategy because what you hear is the strategy that pays the best, that is most profitable. That is the marketing line you're going to hear. No one's going to go out there and buy $1 million commercial slot for something they can't make $1 million from. I mean, that's just not logical. So yeah, the money trail is everything. And I really want to encourage people who are listening, if you want to thrive and you really want your health to thrive, you have got to take a really objective look on the information you're getting and where that source information is coming from and what's the motivation. If you can find someone who is recommending a product and you can't find any way that they're benefiting from it, that's probably a good recommendation. If they're not getting a kickback, they're not on the board, they're not getting the money from it, okay, that might be a really good recommendation. But so many times the money is really driving the answers and we're not hearing the simple answers like we really just need to eat better, wholesome foods that our bodies were intended to process.
Well, and if you can't find a completely unbiased study, which as you're saying, that's probably not that easy, if even possible, to find a completely wholly unbiased study. Even usually at the studies at the bottom, they'll even say, like, here are the different biases that could have played in here or limitations of this study or whatever. But just actually taking the time to, first of all, do the research and not just look at headlines. I mean, a lot of the times headlines are ripped out and they are just completely misrepresenting the entire picture, but also intentionally finding competing evidence, I think is really important because then it helps you kind of understand like what is the deeper meaning here and really get to lay into your intuition there. I know when I was still doing alcohol-free coaching, there was a study that said they looked at alcohol studies. They said 80% of these are not funded by the alcohol industry. They looked at 386 studies, and by looking at that, you're thinking, okay, so yeah, maybe there isn't such a bias. Only 20% are actually funded by the alcohol industry, so maybe we can trust this. And there was another paper written around the same time that looked at 13,000 studies, and 82% of those were funded by the alcohol industry.
Mm.
So So the facts may be the same, right? 80% of this 380 are not by the alcohol industry. And over here, 82% of 13,000 were, right? They're looking at the same thing. They're using completely different data. And if I'm looking at those two things, one of
Hmm.
those feels a lot more reliable to me. And also using, I think your intuition is something really important here too. It's not a word I use that often, but sometimes we're looking for confirmation of things that we know doesn't really make sense. Like if we're looking at alcohol and trying to find a reason that it's healthy for us, it's because we know intuitively it's not, right? Like it's not actually helping our heart. There's a lot of things we could do to help our heart that, doesn't have any negative consequences, unlike maybe drinking a glass of wine. So understanding what our motivation is too in looking at this research, I think is also quite important.
Oh, the motivation is everything. In fact, that's how all these studies start. Let's create a study and let's try to find a reason that this particular thing reduces diabetes. So that's the theory that we're starting with, the hypothesis, right? So, of course, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If that's what you're trying to prove, everything is going to look like, or you're going to be able to find the thing that matches what you're looking for. That's the way our human brains work. It's like I don't know if you've ever been shopping for a car, and then all of a sudden the one or two models that you're looking at, it's like, oh, that's all you see on the streets is because that's what you're looking for. So you're spot on there that we have to take a look at things and understand. I think even just being aware that a lot of these studies are biased and just being aware of that. And by the way, the media is also biased because they too need to sell things. They need to get views. They need to sell papers or magazines or whatever it is that they're trying to sell. So what it comes down to is the best person to experiment with is yourself. So, you have to try certain things. When I was going through my healing process, I did try some of the drugs that are out there on the market, and I felt horrible on them. And I felt horrible about taking them. I'm like, I am not sick because I have a shortage of this drug in my system. I mean, that is not what my body is sick. I don't have a shortage of prednisone in my system. I have a shortage of greens and fruits and vegetables and enriching, protein and things that are really building blocks for my body. So sometimes it's just, nobody's going to be just like you. There's just as many health strategies for as many people as there are in the world. So starting with yourself and just experimenting and being willing to give yourself a whole lot of grace and patience and just know that little by little you'll get better. But I do want to say that what I didn't realize the whole way through is I got to a new normal of where I just thought that was where I had to stay. I was kind of not feeling great, but I just kind of got used to it. And I didn't realize how good I could feel until I really put the time in to get past that. And then looking back, I'm like, wow, I never knew I could feel as good as I feel now.
That's such a great tie-in because I actually had two kind of related questions related to this. The first was one, if there were any symptoms or signs that you missed or felt like you ignored for too long, either before the first one or even when you kind of hit that new normal piece. Actually, I'll stop there and let you address that.
Oh, yeah. Well, in college, right away, I got psoriasis. Right away in college. Well, I never used that as a way to listen to my body. Oh, that's my body trying to tell me something. Had I listened to my body back then, I could have solved my psoriasis decades ago. But I never paid attention to it. So our bodies are constantly giving us feedback, and we have a tendency to just stuff those conversations that our body's trying to tell us into the background so we can get back to business, right? And get back to, thriving and making our business successful and make money and do all those things. But if we pay attention to our body and just listen to them and understand these are cues, it's a language that our body is using to try to tell us, I woke up this morning with a headache. What does that mean? What did I eat last night? Or what kinds of things are in my house that are kind of affecting my body? Or I woke up really grumpy today. I have no patience today. Why is that? Oh, well, I didn't get very good sleep the last couple of nights. That's my body telling me. So it's really having this constant conversation back and forth. And those are the things I missed, Marcy. I missed paying attention to the cues that my body was already giving me.
I can see that because it feels like you said, it's that normal. Like maybe having a headache 3 to 4 times a week is normal. And it's like, but you don't understand how good it can feel. That's something that I had a hard time always communicating about living alcohol free, because if you haven't been there, it's really hard. It's kind of like explaining a dream to someone and they're like, uh-huh, yeah, sure. But so that's what I really want to hear from you now is, what does thriving feel like now? What does this new normal feel like now for you?
Yeah, so many people look at any restrictions, like for you not having alcohol, they look at it as a restriction. Oh, you're not free to just go enjoy life, and I would rebut that to say if you are a slave to alcohol, you're not free at all. If there's anything in your pantry that you can't completely walk away from, you're not free. If those cookies are calling you and you can't say no, you're not free. That's not a free lifestyle. I just found so much freedom, but it was freedom by taking things away and by removing things that were causing me pain and causing my body to disintegrate kind of in right before my very eyes. So I think so often we have this mental state that we think that when we take something away, it's restrictive and it's limiting, and that's not freedom. When in fact, the most freedom comes when we're healthy and we're sleeping well and where our joy is real and we've got a focused mind and we're able to do our business and make an impact in the world. That's freedom. And that sometimes comes from not having alcohol and not having sugar, not having flour, and the things that we think, oh, I could never live without. But in fact, the freedom is right on the other side of letting those shackles go.
I just love that you describe this as freedom. I hadn't actually I don't know that I've ever described it that way myself, but it's the lack of need, the lack of missing, the lack of feeling incomplete with something. Like, if what you were indulging in never made you feel bad, never either physically, mentally, anything, then that's freedom too. But that's just not the case for these things, right? Yeah, Oreos are good until we start to see them, around our waistline or until we start getting cavities or whatever those things are, right? Like we know that there is some kind of negative consequence for these actions, and yet we do them anyway. And that's not freedom. Freedom is being able to say, but I don't need that. I get to choose only what I want and only that's going to make me feel my best, whether physically, mentally, health, all of the above. And so I think that's a very key metaphor there to say that this is freedom, the ability to 100% choose to not need something that you don't actually need. There's no lack. There's no feeling of lack or incompleteness. I think is perfect. If
Exactly.
someone is craving this freedom, if maybe they're suffering physically, mentally, emotionally, something right now and needing that next step, what's your Thrive in 5 for them today?
Oh my goodness, I could have about 55, but depending where they're starting at, you have to just take a hard, objective, honest look at what kinds of foods you're putting in your body. And I would encourage people, number one, look at seed oils and get those out of your pantry. There's just no reason to have seed oils ever. And when I say that, I think, every restaurant out there is using them. So you have to be, if you actually are going to go all in on seed oils, you have to be mindful of that. And there's a trend. It will go. Mark my words, in a few years, we'll start seeing more and more restaurants not using seed oils. By seed oils, I mean canola oil, vegetable oil, cottonseed oil, grapeseed oil, rapeseed oil, soybean oil, palm seed oil. All of those oils are refined, and they're industrial seed oils that are bleached and refined and heated at temperatures and created into this chemical toxicity of things, this chemical cocktail that our bodies were never intended to process. So that's my number one. Get those out of your pantry and choose coconut oil, olive oil, or good sourced olive oil, or an avocado oil, and just start using those. So that's my number one that will help your health in a major way. Number two, move. Just move throughout your day. Movement is actually, our muscles are an actual endocrine system onto themselves. So moving helps your brain, helps you think clearer. It's going to help move the blood throughout your body. Kind of think about it like a swamp versus a river. The swamp just attracts, algae and stagnation and all of that. When your blood is moving like a river and it's constantly kind of flowing, it can move those toxins through your body and clear them out. So move every day. Set a little timer if you work from home. Set a little timer and just get up every hour and walk around the house and come back. It doesn't take a lot, but move every day. Number three, limit or remove sugar and flour. There's absolutely zero reason for them in our bodies. And those tend to be the things, if you give yourself 1 week with no sugar and no flour, the cravings that you have for sugar and flour will go away. And this freedom that Marcy and I were just talking about will come to you. You'll start to feel like you are controlling it instead of it controlling you. And it is such a beautiful feeling to know that you do not need to be controlled by the food that's sitting in your pantry or your refrigerator. Number four, find some time, carve time out to just have some quiet time alone. We all need it. It's just time, shut off the music, shut off the phone, shut off all the things. You don't even need to have music playing. Just sit in some quiet space. Give yourself 5, 10 minutes even to just sit and breathe and let your mind just, have some space. You'll be surprised at what kinds of creative things pop up when you give your brain just a little bit of margin. And then finally is every single day. Find a moment, maybe it's at the end of that little 5 minute quiet that I just mentioned, to just express your gratitude, to just be grateful, especially if you are in the midst of something tough and a tough thing in your business you're trying to thrive through, or something difficult in your family, or life shows up because of a loss or a diagnosis or whatever it may be. There is always a list of things that you could say that you're grateful for. Even if it is, I'm grateful for the solution that is coming that I don't see yet. I'm grateful for it and I know it's coming, because that kind of hope and that mindset sets off literally a physical chain reaction in our cells that helps our bodies heal. So stay grateful in your everyday. So remove seed oils, move every day, limit or remove your sugar and flour, spend some quiet time and be grateful.
Those are perfect. I want to just add one overall, the kind of overcompassing, and that is something that we talked to, which was just decide that you deserve better, right? Like, yes, moving every day. I am not a very sporty person and I do have a sweet tooth. And so some of these are kind of, they feel, like you said before, a little bit restricting in the beginning, but it's until you experience that true freedom. Like there's nothing really in it for us to tell you that life is better on the other side, other than for us to help you get to that other side as well, right? So yes, it can feel like in the moment this is something, but you do deserve better. And it truly is better on the other side when you don't need things that are poisoning your body. You don't have to wait until you can't get out of bed and you've got ulcers and all these things going on. You don't have to wait for a rock bottom. You can just choose right now that you deserve better. This was so fantastic. I think that is really key. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Marcy. It's always a privilege and a pleasure to talk with you.